Welcome to The Art of Medicine, the program that explores the arts, business, and clinical aspects of the practice of medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Andrew Wilner. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Joe Friel. Joe has a master's degree in exercise science and is an elite triathlon and cycling coach. He is also the author of The Triathlete's Training Bible, the world's most comprehensive training guide. It must be a great book because it's just been released in its 5th edition. Joe is also the author of Fast Over 50, and that intrigued me a whole lot more than my idea of a triathlon is a 5K. But Fast Over 50, I'm looking for some exercise tips for those of us who want to or think we should exercise when we're in that part of the age range. But before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor, locumstory.com. Maybe you're curious about locums and how it might fit into your career story. But do you know all the different reasons physicians choose locums and how it works for them? At locumstory.com, you can hear firsthand stories as diverse as physicians themselves. There's not one solution for everyone. The variety of opportunities might surprise you. Locum Story is an unbiased educational resource. It has tools that let you explore trends in your specialty and compare different locums agencies. There's even a simple quiz to see if locums is right for you. Do your own research at locumstory.com. It's easy. Okay, and without further ado, I'd like to welcome my guest, Joe Friel.
Hello, Dr. Wilner. Thank you for having me on.
Joe, it's a real honor. We were talking before I pressed the record button that I have 4 books, and one of them made it to the 3rd edition, but I've never had a book make it to the 5th edition. And I think you told me that book's been around for 25 years.
Yeah, about that. That's right. I wrote
Right,
about
so
1997 or so.
there must be value there. I think is that's the definition of value. It's like the Bible, right? It's been around for a long time, and there's it doesn't go away. So that's fantastic. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about exercise, but
Sure.
before we get started, how did you become an exercise guru? Were you a triathlon runner when you were younger, or are you still running triathlons?
Well, I started actually in junior high school as an athlete. Every sport the school offered, I did it, whatever it was. The only time I got cut was basketball. In my 9th grade class, there were two guys on the team who went on to play in the NBA. This is back in Indiana, which is basketball heaven. And so I didn't make the cut in basketball, but I played every other sport that was available. Always enjoyed it, and eventually became a coach myself, a high school coach, and went on to eventually start coaching endurance athletes who are not just high school athletes, they're adults and sometimes older than I am. And I've been doing that since 1980. So I've been around the block a few times. I've worked with a lot of athletes, and it's not just triathlon. I'm actually involved in lots of sports, road cycling, running, etc., and written books on most sports. And so I just enjoy being around endurance athletes and working with coaches, and it's fun for me. I just enjoy this because it's this thing I do just for enjoyment.
Well, that's fantastic. I did do a program with an endurance athlete who ran. There's a race in Hawaii where it goes on for like 3 days. You do it's like, I think it's, is it the Ironman? Where they do a marathon and 100-mile bicycle and then another marathon and a 6-mile swim. It just goes on and on and on over days and days and days.
Well, there are a couple of races in Hawaii. The most common one, the most normal, the most referred to one is Ironman, which is the world championship for Ironman distance. And that is a 4-kilometer swim, about roughly 2.5 miles. And then bike is 112 miles, and then run is 26.2 miles. And that takes the winner something like about 8 hours roughly. and the cutoff is 17 hours. So there are people out there for the better part of the day. That's the most common race. There's another one too, another race in Hawaii, which is even longer than that, and it goes on for several days. But you have a break at the end of the day. So you do one sport. I don't recall the distances off the top of my head, but it goes on for 3 or 4 days of various events, which is really a extremely difficult event with very few people enter. But they turn people away for Ironman Hawaii. That race can't handle everybody that wants to do it. So yes, there are a couple of races like that in Hawaii.
Right. And I think his was several days. And the reason I had him on the program was not only had he done it more than once, but it was raining one day and his bike skidded. And he woke up in the hospital a few days later with an intracranial hemorrhage and
Wow.
managed to overcome all of that and is back to racing and cycling. So I think there's a certain amount of commitment that goes with being an endurance athlete that I wanted to emphasize.
Well, it is. It's really like any sport as well as you can. It takes a lot of commitment to be really involved at all levels. It's not just the work, things like your nutrition, your sleep, and all kinds of things in your life, even who you associate with and what you think, and all these sorts of things go into being a top level athlete who's competing at these very difficult events over the course of sometimes, as you mentioned, several days.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about that because I'm a little naive, but to me, if you want to get better at a sport, say I want to be a pro tennis player, you exercise for a few hours in the gym, eat right, get enough sleep, and play a lot of tennis. Um, so I was kind of impressed that there's a whole, training book that there's a lot. It's a lot more granular than that. So, can you give
It's,
me an example of something? I mean, that's basically what you got to do. How much harder, how much more complicated is it?
yeah, well, I'm writing another book right now, and I'm there. It's about 9 chapters, I believe, is what it's going to turn out to be. Each chapter is about 10,000 words, and so it's going to be close to 100,000 words by the time I'm all done. And quite honestly, I'm trying to figure out what to leave out. There is so much. When I first started in all of this stuff as a kid, there's nothing called sports science. There was no background at all to what we have right now. Nothing that even came close to what we have now. The early 1980s, that began to change. Sports science began to become much more uh, popular with athletes. And so sports science itself grew. Today, there are, I don't know how many sports scientists there are in the world, but every university has one, it seems, or at least one, maybe multiples. And it really has a lot to do with how good the athlete can be to understand what they need to be doing from a scientific point of view, besides what they have to do from things that are not so scientific, which is like your mental approach and how you feel about all this. That's important also. But the science of sport has become extremely important to athletes at all levels. I've coached athletes from Olympians to beginners, and at every level, there is something we need to understand that's going on in the world of science that will help you become a better athlete if we can make sure we include it in your training. So yes, it has really become something which is remarkable anymore.
I don't follow sports that closely, but I have the impression that there are new records more and more often. That the 4 minute mile is now, every year they seem to be shaving off a few seconds. Is that? I mean, people can't be all that different than they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Is this a result of training?
Yes, that's largely a result of training. There's a lot when you use the word training, it really encompasses a really large umbrella of activities. Uh, for example, we could include in that umbrella, we could include nutrition. What does the athlete eat? Well, that's a science today. What should you eat if you're an endurance athlete? Whereas 30 years ago, it was just, when I was in college, what we did before competition was we ate a steak. And that was considered the height of nutrition for an athlete prior to a race. Today, that would be pretty unusual today to recommend an athlete eat a steak before a competition. Uh, so it's become the science, which is really not only pre-race, but also what's going on during the race. If the athlete's competing for more than an hour, what they eat has a big impact on how well they perform and what they drink. So those things are also very important. And it goes beyond that. You know, if an athlete gets injured, that's pretty much the downside of their if they're a young athlete who's got potential to become a world-class athlete, this could be the end of their career if they get an injury. So there are physicians who deal strictly with that, with making sure athletes are doing the proper things to avoid injury. And if they get something that's coming on as an injury, to take care of it right away and become something which is to prevent them from performing at a high level down the road. So yeah, it's unbelievable what the depth of sports science is anymore. It goes right into things like sleep. You know, how can you sleep better? You know, when I was a young athlete, we never thought about that. You know, it's never crossed my mind. How should I sleep? You just went to bed and you slept. That was it. Today, it's a science. How can you sleep has a lot to do with how well you perform. And so the whole thing is just become a really wide-ranging list of topics that have to do with performance that go well beyond what we ever dreamed of even 40 years ago.
Well, I'd say it's a holistic approach. You really have to consider the mental health of the athlete, the nutrition of the athlete, the sleep, and then, of course, the exercise. And I was just looking over some of your writings, and even the order and how you train in terms of frequency and duration. Like if you're going to run a marathon, say I decide tomorrow I'm going to run the St. Jude Marathon, which is pretty popular here in Memphis. I think your recommendation would not be that I start running marathons tomorrow in as part of my training, right? It would your recommendation would be a little different.
I would certainly agree with that. Yes. Marathon is much more challenging than it looks like on television. When they show it on TV, all you see are people who are happy and coming across the finish line. And besides that, you saw the Kenyans who are running at unbelievable speeds. And for them, it's a 2-hour race. For us, those people who are not world class, we're talking 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. And it's not fun at all when you've been out there for 4 hours and you've still got another 2 hours to go. You should not take these things lightly. It should be the sort of thing you decide to do maybe 2 years from now. In the meantime, let's finish a 5K. Let's move up to a 10K. And eventually let's do a half marathon. And then eventually let's try a marathon. But people who start out with a marathon are really making a mistake, which is hard to overcome once you're at 12 miles, you begin to realize this is not as easy as it looks on TV.
Yeah, I concur. Now let's seg over to exercise over 50. There
Sure.
are many people who were not, unlike you, high school athletes who at the age of 50 or so realize that their body is not looking or feeling the way they want it to. And people are telling them, including their doctor, that exercise is important to lower their cholesterol, lower their weight, or to help with their bad knees, or just, to live a longer, healthier life. So, what are some tips for people in that category to get started, number one, and then I would say the big problem is how to maintain it also. How do you convince yourself that it's a good thing to do?
Yeah, I run into people all the time come to me late in life, like 50 suggested, and they're quite sure what to do. They may have been athletes when they were younger, but they had 25 years or more of not being involved in sport at all, and they want to get back into it now at some level. This will start. And that can be challenging because there are so many things that have changed. We could talk about what is fitness and get all involved in those details. But that's really well beyond what this athlete needs to be talking about. What this athlete needs to be talking about is how can I become more consistent in my exercise? That's the primary thing. And the first thing I look at for an athlete at any level, from novice to world-class athlete, is the frequency of their exercise. How often do they work out? world-class athletes in some sports like triathlon, for example, are working out, oh gosh, 12, 15 workouts a week. That's not the sort of thing you're going to do if you're brand new to the sport and you're 50 years old. You need to start some, and we're just going to start off by doing short workouts. And our focus is not so much on those workouts becoming longer, but rather becoming more of them. I'd rather see the athletes start off by doing 2 walking exercises a week. That would be one of the best things they could do to get started. For example, in running or triathlon, is just to go out and walk 2 days a week. So we start off with a frequency of 2. And that duration can be short. I don't care how long it is, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half hour, whatever is appropriate for you. I can't tell you what's appropriate for you. You have to decide that for yourself. But that's my starting point. We're going to do like 2 exercises during the entire week. And then we're going to start moving up gradually. After weeks, we'll move up to 3 workouts a week of your duration, whatever you want to do. Then eventually 4. And we'll hopefully get to 5 exercises a week, 5 times a week that you work out. And at that point, when we get there, now we're going to start thinking about durations. Until that point, I don't care how long it is. Let's just get out the door and exercise. Whatever you want to do. It could be a rowing machine. It could be on a treadmill. It could be a bike. It could be whatever you want to do. That's fine. Let's do it. Let's start off doing whatever you want to do for as long as you want to do it. Then we're going to start talking about, okay, let's begin to narrow this down. Let's make one of your workouts longer. So you're up to 5 workouts a week. Let's take one of them longer. And let's decide exactly what type of sport we want to do. What is it that you most want to do? I'm asked that question a lot by athletes who are new to sport. They say, or even people who are not in sport at all right now. What's the best exercise to do? The answer to that question is the best exercise to do is the one you enjoy the most. That's the best exercise. So if you've been doing lots of things, which is good, I highly recommend people do that, lots and lots of things in their exercise program. Pick out the one you think is the best, that you really like the most, the one you're most likely to do, and let's become just a little bit more serious about it. Now we're going to start making that one longer. If you were only going like 10 minutes before, 15 minutes, whatever it may have been, let's bump that up by 10 minutes and see what happens. We'll keep the other 4 like they are, but we'll take 1 exercise a week. You were doing 10 minutes on a treadmill. Let's bump that up to walking 15 minutes on the treadmill. And then we're going to slowly, gradually build that up to maybe we'll get to 30 minutes. And then we're going to pick out another day in the week and we're going to do the same thing. It could be the same sport on the treadmill, or it could be a rowing machine, or it could be whatever you enjoy doing, riding your bicycle. So let's find what you enjoy doing and begin to go from frequency, how often, I don't care how long, to duration with 1 of those workouts, eventually with 2 of those workouts. We're not going to go beyond that. We're only going to do 2 workouts that are longer workouts. And then we're going to start talking about, and this is a long way down the road, intensity. How fast are you riding your bike? How fast are you running, and so forth? And that's a much more difficult thing to deal with, and not the sort of thing that I want to get too involved with the athlete at all. Because the intensity is going to remain easy. It's never going to become hard. If it becomes hard, we're making a mistake. If you dread the workout because it's too hard, we're not going to do it. Just don't do the workout. I'd rather you not do the workout in that case. It's wrong someplace. They should always be easy, but slightly harder than it was before. So easy has various stages. When I was in school as a kid, we didn't have heart rate monitors. We didn't have power meters. We didn't have stopwatches. We had absolutely nothing when I was in school. All you had to go on is how you felt. When you talked about how your run was, you would say, oh, it was easy, or it was very hard, or there became shades of easy. Well, it was easy, but it was moderately easy, or it was kind of like on the hard side of easy. And so this becomes, after a while, becomes something which is a science, and talking with athletes about how hard is a workout or how easy is it. But we're going to keep it easy. That's where all the benefits come to us as athletes, is on the easy side, but people think they have to go hard to get the benefits. They don't have to. It's really the easy workouts that pay off the most.
I love this discussion because a couple of years ago, I decided that I was going to exercise more, and I was never really a college or high school, athlete. I worked out a little, but it wasn't my thing. But my approach has been, well, I'm just going to show up every day and do whatever I feel like doing. If it's the bicycle, or I'll go jogging, or a climber or rower, whatever it is, I'll do it for 20 minutes or a half an hour. And because I get bored and I don't really like it that much, but I'll just do it. And I've been doing that for a couple of years, which is part of the reason we're having this discussion, because I wanted to learn more. But I think it's like, you probably remember that there was a big news item a while back about talking to your plants, and somehow if you talk to your plants, they grew better. I mean, this was a big scientific discovery. And what they eventually figured out was that the people who talked to their plants also watered their plants and repositioned their plants and trimmed their plants and took pretty good care of their plants, which is why they did better. It had nothing to do with them talking to the plants or not. And I think just showing up to exercise is what you're saying, and not overdoing it, because I think you didn't mention this, but to me, one of the things I see is that people get, New Year's resolution and they go out and they go run 10 miles and then everything hurts. And they're not going to try it again for 6 months, rather than doing a 15-minute jog where they might actually go out again the next day. They overdo it and then everything hurts, particularly in the over 50 crowd. And that can be very discouraging.
I agree. Yeah, one of the biggest issues always in getting started is motivation. Um, so what I tell people who are experiencing a motivation problem is the number one thing that helps you become motivated is to have a training partner. There's somebody who's going to do it with you. There's nothing that gets you more motivated than knowing you're not going to be alone. You're going to have somebody who's going to suffer with you. And so you have a training partner. And if you find the right training partner, and it could be a spouse, it could be your husband or your wife, that could be your training partner, or it could be your next door neighbor who also wants to get started in running or biking or whatever it may be. And you agree to meet tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. so get your workout in before you have to take a shower and breakfast and go to work. So you're going to meet at 7 a.m. And so when you wake up at 6:30 and you're thinking, gosh, I really don't want to go out. But then you realize, my next door neighbor is going to be waiting for me at the corner at 7 o'clock. So I better get going. That's the best motivator there is. If there are other motivators, I tell people also, if you can't find a partner, here's what to do. Get your clothing you're going to wear for your workout tomorrow. Let's say you're going for a run. So you're going to have your shoes, your shorts, a shirt, whatever you're going to wear. Lay those things out the night before so they're all ready to go. So you don't have to make a decision if we're going to wear this shirt or the other shirt. Does it match these shorts or not match these shorts? Do I want to wear the blue shoes or the red shoes? That sort of thing is all taken care of. You got it all ready to go. All you got to do is wake up in the morning, get dressed, and go out the door. And then I tell them, if you still think you're not going to have the motivation to go out the door, do this. Tell yourself, I'll only go for 5 minutes. I'm only going to go for 5 minutes. Turn around and come back. What always happens is you get 5 minutes into it, you say, well, this isn't so bad after all. I think I'll go a few more minutes. So there are various ways of helping yourself become motivated, but still the best one is having a training partner. That is by far numero uno as far as motivation.
Joe, I love that, because the other thing I do that I find hard to do is write. I'm a writer for my whole life. And it's just so daunting that I will tell myself, well, I'm just going to write for 5 minutes. That's it. And that is like, okay, anybody can do that. And often 3 hours later, I'm still there. But I agree with you. I think that first 5 minutes is definitely the most difficult. Okay, so one last thing to wrap up here. So you're 55 years old, you don't exercise. I mean, maybe you're 65 years old and you don't exercise. Like, what's the point? You're not going to live forever. Is it worth the trouble?
Oh, is it worth the trouble? Man, there's nothing worth more valuable than movement, exercise. We are cut out as human beings to be athletes, to move. We're not cut out to sit in a chair all day long. We are cut out to be on our feet and moving in some way. That's part of our DNA. That's who we are. Let's take an example of this. I hear people say this all the time. I'm too old. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm too old. I hear that in the gym sometimes. I'm in the locker room and I'll hear somebody on the other side of the locker, a guy who's 40 years old saying, I'm too old to be doing this. And I'm thinking, holy smoke, he's just a kid. He's got 60 years ahead of him yet, and he's calling himself too old right now. Not the case at all. Let's talk about a study, science study on this very topic. This has now been probably 8, 10 years ago. There was a research study in which a group of 90-year-olds in a nursing home were put on a strength building program. At the very same time, a group of college students were put on a strength building program. Neither of the two groups were lifting exercise, had been doing any exercise at all prior to this. So they went for, I forgot how many weeks it was. It was something like 6 or 8 weeks, something like that. They followed their programs. What did they find? They found at the end of that period of time, like 6 or 8 weeks, whatever it may have been, what they found was the 90-year-olds improved at the very same percentage from where they started, very same percentage as the college students. The college students wound up lifting lots more weight, for example, but they also started at a heavier weight. The 90-year-olds started at a much lower weight and didn't go nearly as high, obviously, but they improved by the same percentage. So there's actually nothing about having some kind of about this idea of being too old. Being too old is not an excuse for not exercising. There's something else going on in a person's mind when they say they're too old. They're looking for an excuse. There's no excuse. We're supposed to be moving. That's who we are as human beings. We're supposed to be moving all day long or repeatedly before we take breaks for meals and just to sit down and relax for a while and chat with our neighbors, whatever it may be. But the next day we're back out there again and we're doing it again. It's just the way we are. We're supposed to do that.
Joe, I think that is a great positive note to end on. I'll just mention you've got several books. They're all over Amazon when I check. So is it Fast Over 50? Is that the title?
Fast After 50.
Fast After 50. Okay, Fast After 50. That sounds like the one for me. And if you're more serious, there's the Triathlon Training Bible. I might graduate to that someday. You never know. But Joe Friel, thanks so much for joining me on The Art of Medicine.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wilner. I appreciate you having me on.
Before we close, I'd like to give another thanks to our sponsor, locumstory.com, a resource where providers can get real, unbiased answers about locum tenens. I'm Dr. Andrew Wilner. See you next time.
This program is hosted, edited, and produced by Andrew Wilner, MD, FACP, FAAN. Guests receive no financial compensation for their appearance on The Art of Medicine. Andrew Wilner, MD, is Associate Professor of Neurology at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, Memphis, Tennessee. Views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this program belong solely to Dr. Wilner and his guests and not necessarily to their employers, organizations, or other group or individual. While this program intends to be informative, it is meant for entertainment purposes only. The Art of Medicine does not offer professional financial, legal, or medical advice. Dr. Wilner and his guests assume no responsibility or liability for any damages, financial or otherwise, that arise in connection with consuming this program's content. Thanks for watching. For more episodes of The Art of Medicine, please subscribe. www.andrewwilner.com